Okay, folks, how you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? I should be live now, hopefully. Hopefully I'm not just sitting here talking to my webcam like an idiot, and people are actually watching. Well, looks like at least one person is. Anyway, hi there. So this is my first live stream of the year. Let me just put myself over here like that. And then, let's see, I had a bunch of crap over here. What are we gonna talk about today? Well, I figured we'll start with some news and things like that, and then talk about Trump a little bit, talk about politics. Kitty, stop that. My cat is hanging out behind the monitors here. Stay back there, please. Anyway, so, let's see. What do you want to talk about? Let me make myself a little bigger here. Let's see. First things first. Prince Harry and his is stepping away from his royal duties and is no longer going to live off of tax money in the UK. Yeah, that's interesting, but really, who cares? If there's one thing in this world that I really don't care about, it's the royal family in England, because first off, I don't live in England. Cat, stop that. Cat is chewing on stuff. Get out of here. I don't live in England, so it doesn't bother me at all. I don't really care what they do or who they are, you know? Like, do you remember when, like, their first child was born and it was like this major fucking thing? Right? And it's like, I just don't give a shit about the stupid fucking royal baby or any of them at all. So yeah, great. I guess it's good that, he's going off and he's going to be financially independent and all that other shit. And it's like the end of an era, whatever. Really, really, who cares? I don't know. Hang on one second, folks. There we go. Had to turn that off. That noise was bugging me. Anyway. So yeah, but let's get into a little bit more here. We got some politics on our side of the pond. Let me see. Let me just open that up a little in case somebody's trying to say something to me or whatever. Okay, big news here in liberal tree hugger circles that I frequent is this feud between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, which is like, all over liberal media, right? And before any of you guys actually say it, no, not all of the media is liberal media. Like, I'm talking about the real liberal media, right? Not like the shit that you people think is liberal media. Anyway, I'm talking about places like things like the Young Turks or Democracy Now!, stuff like that. And apparently there's this feud. They're feuding, right? And it's because apparently they had a conversation where Bernie Sanders said a woman can't be president or something, which immediately that sounds a little fishy, doesn't it? Because Bernie Sanders has a pretty good track record when it comes to this kind of thing. And it really sounds a lot to me like just the same kind of smear that they did to him during the 2016 election, Like the whole Bernie Bros thing, and now he's like sexist and all this other shit. And it really seemed like, because back then what it really boiled down to was, he's going to take the nomination away from Hillary Clinton, and they seem to capitalize on that sort of, well, let's make him sexist kind of thing, right? In order to like divide people and shit. And it didn't really work that well. I mean, some people, yeah, they really pushed it pretty hard, the whole Bernie Bros thing, but it was really not true at all. Really very much a myth. And it seems like, to me at least, I mean, I could have my head up my ass here, but it seems to me like somebody on the Warren side said, hey, that was pretty effective, let's do the same thing. Because Bernie Sanders is like, yeah, not even close to being sexist. In fact, I think what it is that he encouraged Elizabeth Warren to run in 2015, right? And we actually have video of him talking to children and stuff like that in the 80s, saying like, hey, girls should run for, office, should run for president. In fact, I actually have one of those videos queued up here, so let me move this over. And I'm just going to use this section, so hopefully Young Turks won't get mad at me and try to mess me up. But this is Bernie Warren. This is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders in like the 80s talking to kids here. Okay.
There have been.
Let me turn that up for you.
Women mayors all over the country. There's a woman governor. So who can tell you the name of her governor? Yeah.
I think it's
Wow, that kid's haircut.
Cunin is a woman, and there are other. Not a whole lot.
I wonder what year this was.
The mayor of San Francisco
exactly.
is a woman, and there are many women mayors, but not enough. And one.
All right, hang on a second. But look at this guy's shirt. Holy fucking shit. That's like, wow. This guy right here just looks like, a porn star in the 80s. But anyway, okay, let's continue.
The very important thing, and I hope that all the girls in this class understand that you, just as much as the boys, have a right to become president. There's not been a woman president, although there was a woman who was giving thought to running for president this time, from Colorado, a woman named Representative Schroeder, gave some thought. I hope that the girls will think that they have the right to be involved in politics quite as much as the boys do.
So, there you go. I mean, I highly, it just doesn't seem to fit his character, being a sexist like that. Right. I mean, I don't know, like, Bernie Sanders has been very consistent over the last, 40 years of his public life, A lot of politicians evolve and change over time and respond, their personal attitudes towards things evolve in response to what the prevailing attitudes are, A lot of politicians, for example, Barack Obama, for example, didn't support gay marriage when he first became president. And then as it went on, his position on that changed. And why does it change? It changes because the people you represent, change. And you got to be adaptable. And if you're gonna represent them specifically, then you should, change your view to align with theirs, because that's what your job is, And as much as people complain about, Republicans and stuff about how they're stuck in the Stone Age with social issues and shit like that, the people they represent share those issues. It's just on their side, they're only representing one portion of the population and saying fuck everybody else. And it's like, we can disagree with it and all that stuff, but that's really what your representative should do. Well, you look at Bernie Sanders. I mean, this is the 80s here. Like I was saying, look at that guy's shirt, right? 40 years ago, he's saying this shit. So it's like, it's not like his attitudes are changing. It's not like it's evolving and he's just suddenly now not sexist and he always used to be. No, man. He was like never sexist, right? See, that's the thing, okay? We here on the left, I think, hold our politicians and our representatives to a much higher standard than you get on the right wing, Because for some people out there, just this accusation that he said this thing would disqualify him like that. Some people just are very, very one-issue voters. Like we say that a lot on the right as well. A lot of people on the right are abortion. That's their issue. Gun rights. That's their issue. And they'll vote for whatever politician supports gun rights or wants to ban abortion. Well, we have the same kind of thing on the left as well. We like to pretend that we don't, but we do. There are people out there that, a lot of people like feminism is their issue, and they'll never vote for a man, right? Seriously, that shit exists. Okay, you would think it's like kind of ridiculous, but it's true. There's other people on the left, for example, universal health care is their issue, and they don't care about anything else that the guy does, or whatever. He could be for war, and he could be for removing the First Amendment rights or banning abortion, but as long as he's for universal health care, that's it. You know, you see that a lot on the left. Things like the Yang Gang. That's another one. You know, Andrew Yang. You know, UBI. That's his issue, right? And the people that support him want UBI, and they don't really give a shit about the rest of his, you know, rest of his agenda, right? Or the people who support him or anything like that. They don't care about the rest of that shit. So yeah, I really think that this is kind of I don't think that this is anything that Elizabeth Warren herself directed, right? It sounds to me like this is her consultants saw that she's not going to make it, right? She's like in third place now or something like that. Like Bernie's like in the Iowa caucus or some shit. You know, Bernie Sanders is in first, and then she's like third, and then Biden hit number 2. And I think her people are telling her, hey, you need to get into the news. You need to get your name out there into the news, you know, with you on top. So attack the guy who's leading, right? And they had to dig through some shit and find some shit to like attack him for, because you can't attack him. You can't attack them because they kind of share the same, like, you know, they kind of share the same platform. You know, Elizabeth Warren's is not as left-leaning as Bernie Sanders, but it's still pretty close. They're essentially interchangeable in most ways, you know, except for minutia of the details, right? And really, I would myself personally, I would vote for either one of them. You know, in fact, well, that's just me, because I would vote for, like, you know, a mop with some Groucho Marx glasses on it and a wig for over Trump. That's what I would do. But, you know, I'm not a picky man. But, you know, there's, especially in the primaries, you know, the primaries, this is when you're supposed to be picky. You know, you're supposed to find the person you want, and you know, he supports this, and that, and that's what I want, and I'm going to vote for him, and, you know, whatever. And then when it gets to the general, then you start thinking about who's better for the country. You know, once it hits the general election, if Elizabeth Warren becomes the candidate, she'll be immeasurably better for the country than Donald Trump, and I'll vote for her, right? Anyway, so yeah, I think the whole thing's kind of, you know, kind of bullshit, really. And I also think another factor in this is that the mainstream media, you know, the CNNs and Foxes and things, they really want to have that same kind of ridiculous clown car kind of thing going for the left wing that all the right wingers had. Like, if you remember back in 2016 when, you know, all the Republicans were vying for position, and it seemed like every week another Republican candidate was at the top. You know, at first it was fucking, you know, Ted Cruz was at the top, and then it was, you know, I can't even remember, Jeb Bush, you know, and they just kept kind of going through them over and over and over. And in the meantime, Donald Trump kept kind of sneaking up from behind and grabbing headlines and getting closer and closer in the polls, you know. And the people in the mainstream media, like even Fox News, really didn't want Donald Trump. If you remember that, they really didn't want Donald Trump to be the nominee because they thought he'd lose. You know, everybody thought he would lose. And so they kept putting other people in front. But mainly it was that sort of drama that they had. You know, Trump would call Marco Rubio a name, right? And then he'd insult, like, you know, Ted Cruz's wife, and then say his father, you know, was implicated in the JFK assassination, shit like that. And it caused like these media shitstorms, which is incredibly good for ratings, right? I think that's what they want. You know, that's what they're trying to create with the Democrats. They want to have infighting, you know, because it's like wrestling. You know, they want to have Bernie Sanders coming off the top rope and hitting Elizabeth Warren, and then Elizabeth Warren doing a 619 and, you know, Frankensteining fucking Bernie onto the mat and all of that. 1, 2, 3, you're out. You know, that's what they want. And really, that has not really happened very much on the Democratic side. We've had debates which, you know, were generally peaceful. No one's really attacking each other, really. I mean, this is really the first time that in the last year that you can think of two candidates, you know, who are feuding, right? And it's like, as far as feuds go, it's like weak sauce. Each side comes out, you know, they're not calling each other names. They're not like taunting each other at rallies and shit like that. And it's not creating that same kind of media buzz. You know, people aren't tuning into CNN and MSNBC and sitting there salivating, waiting to see what Bernie's going to say next, the same way they did for Trump at Fox in the last election. So I think that really is a big part of this as well. Anyway, moving on. What else? Cory Booker dropped out. Who cares? Was he going to win? No. So, yeah, whatever. Let's see what else we got here. How much time have we already spent? I think we've already been talking for like how long? 16 minutes already. Damn. Anyway, let's see. Moving on. So, yeah, what else am I going to talk about? Let's talk about Trump's impeachment here. So Nancy Pelosi has finally sent the impeachment articles to the Senate, finally. And I guess the whole thing was she was holding out for a long time because supposedly she wanted to make sure there was a fair trial and all this because, Mitch McConnell was basically hinting that he was just going to, ram this thing through with no witnesses, no nothing, right? Which is ridiculous. And I don't know. I think if that were to happen, I think people would get pissed off. Like, I think because at one point they were saying that they weren't even going to have a trial. He was just going to bring it up to a vote and then just have, because he knows he's got the votes to acquit and they're not going to actually impeach. And, yeah. And I think that would really, there would be a very bad reaction to that. I think the core base of Republicans would laugh and think the shit's hilarious, and you'd see people on Twitter congratulating themselves and patting each other on the back and shit. And I think that the 75% of Republicans who like to pretend that they're not assholes would probably react to that very badly. Right? And you would see, even on things like Fox News, you would see people really, really go crazy if that's what they did. So they got to have at least some kind of sham trial, even if we all know that it's not going to amount to anything. Right. Yeah, so hang on. So I guess that's probably going to happen sometime next week or something like that. And supposedly there are 3 Republican senators that have broken with the GOP and are going to ask to see witnesses, right? I think they kind of realize that if they don't call witnesses, people aren't going to buy it, Like I think they know. I think they know that there has to be the appearance of legitimacy, right? And if it doesn't at least look like they went through the proper paces and did all the right, did all the right moves and dotted all their T's and I's and things like that. And if it looks like they're not, taking the shit seriously, it's going to react very bad for them. And even though the president might be in, might be there and might even get elected, I think the GOP knows that overall this whole thing is very, very bad for them. Things are not looking very good for them in the next election, at all. Like the general GOP approval rating is very, very low. You're starting to see, like, all through the last year, seats in special elections kept going to Democrats over and over and over, right? In places that, even in the last election, the midterms, like, they pretty much got annihilated, and seats that have been, in places like Alabama and stuff that have been traditionally Republican for decades got switched over. So I think they kind of realize that, we're kind of up shit creek in this next election. So I think they know that if they, they have to kind of at least show that they're trying to be legit. Right. Even if after all of it, there's still 0 Republican votes and he gets acquitted. He's not removed from office, which is most likely going to happen. That's, I give that a 99% chance. Probably 100% chance, but right, 99% chance that it's still not going to work after all of this shit. Because they have to get like 67 senators, which is impossible. There's no fucking way. But if they don't at least make it look like they went through the process, then in the election they're gonna suffer for that shit. So yeah, I guess that is gonna happen next week. And I don't know. I just think I did a video on this. Actually, it was my last video. I think people are gonna be disappointed. Just don't get your hopes up, I guess, is what I want to tell people, because really, we really are in kind of a crisis right now. Not just our country, like the entire world is in a crisis, like Australia right now is burning to the ground. It's been on fire for how long now? How long have these fires been going in Australia? 2, 3, 4 weeks at this point. They were happening in fucking December, weren't they? That's really, that's not a good thing. I mean, and I can kind of identify with that shit. Like I've said several times here on this channel that my house was like in the line of fire in 2018. Fire came within 20 feet of my door. The shit was not funny, and that only lasted, the big Woosley fire, right? That only lasted a couple of days. Within 3 days they had that under control, right? I can't even imagine the scale of what's happening in Australia right now. But it's like kind of like at the same time while we have, extreme environmental degradation and disasters happening, also, the Middle East suddenly like turns into a flying shit show, right? And it's sort of like, what's wrong with this picture, right? How come we're ignoring all of this crazy, ridiculous shit that's going on with our climate and our environment that is going to pretty much threaten us a lot in about a decade, while we're fighting over what exactly? Why are we fighting with Iran anyway? Like why? What's the point? What are we supposed to get out of Iran? What do they want there, right? I mean, I think, I don't know. I think that they're using it as a they wanted basically Iraq to be an ally so that they could, and a proxy against Russia ultimately, but also against Iran and Syria and stuff like that, so that they could have, more control over that region, because it's a vitally important strategic region. I mean, really, it's still, I mean, if you really think about it, who's the real big enemy in that part of the world? It's not Iran, it's not Syria, it's not ISIS even. The huge enemy is Russia, right? And that's really the only reason. Russia, and the fact that a lot of our oil comes from the Middle East, and that's really the only reason why we have any interest there at all. Those parts of the world that don't have any strategic interest to us, we don't have a presence. You know what I mean? Like fucking Chile or something. We don't have a presence there, right? Fucking right. So it's like, why? Well, if they had oil, we'd probably have a presence there. Anyway, so yeah, man, it's like it's we really have our priorities wrong here. Just as a species, I think, right? And we can't really control what happens to the rest of the world. Okay, we don't have a lot of input on what people in China do or what people in Africa do. Like a lot of the shit you hear from people saying stuff like, well, why should we take steps to curb our emissions and clean up our environment if China and India aren't going to do it? They're just gonna cheat. They should do it with us. It's like, yeah, okay, that's true, right? But we don't control what they do, and it's kind of like, well, if all of your friends jump off a cliff, do you jump off a cliff too? right? You know, like, no, man, you should do the right thing. Quiet. Sorry. Um, you should do the right thing regardless of what other people, you know, if they support you or if they like participate or not. You know, the right thing to do here is to really clean up our environment. You know, we need to restructure our economy to be a clean economy, right? And the first thing we got to do there is to transition away from oil, right? Which is not going to be easy, right? And I mean, not going to be easy at all if it's even possible to do 100%, which it most likely won't be. There will probably always be in some, you know, some proportion of our energy needs will be met by oil, whether that's trucking or, you know, whatever, right? Jet fuel, shit like that. I mean, until somebody can invent, you know, an effective electric, you know, 18 wheeler, right? Or an electric airliner, there's still going to be need for petroleum, right? But, you know, but what do you know, they make a big dent with commercial electric cars, electric vehicles, right? And they're not just little tiny rinky dink little cars anymore, you know, like the one I have, right? I actually have an electric car. Well, my wife does, but um, yeah, they're not just little rinky dink things. You know, you can buy electric SUVs that have a, you know, 300-mile range, right? Or electric trucks. And the funny thing is that the bigger they are, the farther their range is because the more batteries you can put in them. You know, it doesn't seem like it would be that way, right? It seems like that would be like the other way around, but that shit's true. There's a lot we can do just with that and wind and solar, you know, to get away from coal and natural gas and fracking, wind, solar, and even nuclear power, you know. And I know a lot of people on the left don't like nuclear power. Really, I don't like nuclear power either. Um, but it is less polluting as far as carbon emissions go than coal or, you know, anything like that, especially coal, but, you know, coal, oil, right? Um, Natural, you know, less damaging to the environment than natural gas if you can avoid the meltdowns and shit like that. And, you know, there are things you can do to create nuclear reactors that won't melt down the same way that, say, the Fukushima one did. You know, there's security features you can put into it, and you can isolate them in, you know, you can put it in the middle of the desert where there's nobody around for 300 miles, right? You can do shit like that. You know, you can make thorium reactors that we have the technology for and should have been building for years and years. And the reason why, if any of you out there don't know this, thorium reactors, you know, they don't have the same kind of dangerous radiation problems. The reason why we didn't go in that direction back in the 50s is because the Department of Defense wanted to make the other reactors that create enriched uranium so that they can use them in bombs. That's the reason why. That's not a conspiracy. That's actually true. Right. So, anyhow, these are things that we need to take these things seriously, right? We really, and in order to do this, we need to have national leadership. Okay. It doesn't help us if everybody in the country wants to have solar power, you know, if the leadership in the country doesn't go for it, you know. And right now we have a president who's just not interested, you know. And not only is he not interested, he's actually detrimental to the cause, you know. It's such that wind power causes cancer, shit like that. It kills birds or all this other ridiculous bullshit that he says, you know. And it's kind of like they don't care. Like the Republicans really just don't care. They don't have any forward vision, thinking vision at all about the consequences of what our current, you know, economic system is going to do to the country. I mean, seriously, think about it. Just think about it, okay? What do you think? Right now in the country, as of today, there's this massive polar storm sweeping pretty much the entire lower 48, right? It's even cold here. I'm in Los Angeles, right? It's freezing. I'm wearing a coat at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, right? You know, California is supposed to be sunny and like even, warm in the wintertime. It's not supposed to get cold like this out here. It's like fucking, 45 degrees outside. It's ridiculous. Okay. This is not supposed to happen, even in the wintertime. Not in California, right? But yeah, the rest of the country, I'm sure you've been watching the news. There's this massive rainstorms, snowstorms and shit. How many times has that happened over the last decade? Snowmageddon. You guys remember that? And then every year, it's like we go from these massive extremes now. Winters are getting colder and colder. Summers are getting hotter and hotter. And every year there's this massive fire season where everything fucking burns down. Right? This is what our country is turning into. Okay, it's becoming increasingly inhospitable. Not to animals and shit, not only just to the animals and stuff like that. It's becoming inhospitable to like us. You can't have a house someplace if it's going to flood or burn down every year, right? How you just think about, okay, let's not even consider the human cost involved. Okay, because Republicans don't give a shit about human cost. They don't care, all right? Think about the economic cost. Okay, money, right? Republicans know they care about money, okay? How are you going to buy a house if you can't, if your fire insurance costs more than the house yourself? How are you going to do that? Okay? Who's going to insure your house if every single year there's a gigantic wildfire that hits that area? Right? Well, the law says you have to insure it, okay? But how much is that going to cost? All right? Who's going to pay for that? If you're an insurance company, right, are you going to just offer it in that area? No, you're not. So what's going to happen is that the state is going to have to force you to do it. And so you're going to say, okay, well, then now it's going to cost $50,000 to insure your house for the year because there's a high chance that the shit might burn down. Well, who's going to be able to afford to live in a house? Right? Just think about that, okay? Now, because the number one way that most people in the country, acquire wealth is through houses. It's through buying a house, paying it off, right? And then by the time they die, they have this property that they pass on to their kids. That's really how everybody else in the 99%, that's the number one way that they pass on generational wealth, all right? Well, what are you going to do when you can't buy houses and where are people going to live, right? And it's going to really destroy the economy in a lot of ways, and you're going to have people getting increasingly pushed into cities, further and further into cities where there's no work, right? Because you can't live out in the country because it's dangerous, you won't be able to have a permanent settlement anywhere, right? In the meantime, it's just kind of like we're at the forefront of several major catastrophes that are all kind of converging all together at the same time. We have climate catastrophes, right? We have fucking war in the Middle East and shit, which is starting to hit a boiling point. It's kind of like over there in the Middle East right now, it's kind of like pre-World War One, where all it really takes is, a spark to set off a powder keg. Like in World War One, it was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, which caused this major fucking powder keg, and then all these other countries started fighting each other. That's kind of what's going on in the Middle East right now. It's starting to align like that. And all it's going to take is, India dropping a bomb on Pakistan or something like that. And then World War III is going to start, or the president of Iraq insulting the president of Iran and them starting a war, and then everybody's going to join in. And that's kind of how it's starting to shape up. They have that's another crisis, right? We have a looming unemployment crisis, which is going to hit hard due to automation, right? People are, they're not talking about that shit. That's gonna hit within my lifetime. I give that maybe another 20 years before it gets really bad, you know, but it's already coming. It's already starting to affect, people in the service industries, you know, like, like I said, I actually touched on this in one of the other live streams. Um, the first job experience that most people in the country get is at McDonald's. That's the number one, like, number two is the United States Army. Okay, so more people get their first job experience at McDonald's than they do the Army. Well, what are you going to do when all of the McDonald's are automated? When you just walk in, right, you press your button on the little screen that comes up, and then a little conveyor belt drops your hamburger and your fries off. And there's maybe like two people running the entire thing. You know, that shit's gonna happen within 30 years. It'll be like that. It will. There's gonna be like maybe three people that work there, where currently there's a crew of 25 or something. That's totally gonna happen. The only people that are gonna work there are gonna be people to sweep the floor, right? Because it'll be cheaper to hire someone to sweep the floor than it will be to build a robot to do it. And then eventually they'll just get Roombas. That's exactly what's going to happen, right? So what are you going to do when you have millions of people out of work, right? Confined into, smaller and smaller spaces because the environment is too bad. They can't live out in the rest of the country, right? Because it's too dangerous, and, looming wars going, and this is what the world is going to turn into. And it's really kind of sad because this is the time right now. Right now is the time where we can stop it. If you want to reverse any of this stuff, if you want to make the world a better place for your children right now, this is really it. This is it. Okay. I know that all through when you were growing up over the last couple of decades, they're always telling you, someday this shit's going to happen. Well, now it's starting to happen. Right? And really think about the year 2050, okay? In 2050, I'll be 75 years old, all right? And right around there is probably right where I'm gonna die. If I live to be 80, I think then I'll be very happy. I'll say that I won the game of life, right? Chances are I'm not gonna live to be 80, but I most likely will live to be 75, and I'll say the year 2050. What I'm describing, I think that's really what's going to happen. The year 2050. Think about what it's going to look like. What are we going to be eating in the year 2050? There's not going to be any bees left. Or if they are, they're going to be like incredibly endangered. Right? There won't be any left in the wild. That's for fucking sure. How are we gonna I don't know, man. I don't see a very, very positive outcomes for anything. And the reason why is because of Republicans. That's why. That's why. It's because of conservatives and Republicans who are ignoring these problems today. They either don't care, right? Or they just, purposely work against it because they want to hurt liberals. That's what it is. It's like when, your big brother wants to play with your toy and you don't want to give it to him, so you smash it so that way he can't play with it. Well, now you can't play with it either. That's what's going on right now to our entire planet. Right? We're smashing the toys so that we don't have to share them. And I don't know, man. And I don't want to sound like a pessimist, all right? I know what I just said. I just said all this shit. It's very pessimistic. It sounds very bad. Sounds like there's no hope. No, there is. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of things even you yourself can do to try to stave off some of this shit. As far as the environment goes, for example, plant a tree. I'm watching these videos on YouTube about people who are using drones to go and they make these like little tree bombs. And it's like a sack with a bunch of seeds and fertilizer in it, and they fly out and drop them. And you know, the idea is that it's going to drop and then the sack dissolves, you know, and it's got soil, and then that's going to grow into a tree, you know, and they can do like 1,000 a day or something like that, way faster than like a normal person can go out and plant trees, right? That's something. Okay, you know, I mean, you can live your normal life, you know, recycle and all that shit, right? Turn off lights when you're not using them, and like, you know, and there's other small ways, you know, get efficient fucking appliances, and you know, even some states even allow you to subsidize renewable energy, and when you pay for your power bill, like that's something we can do in California. I've got mine set, you know, to like 100%, which I actually pay a little bit more, but really it's like, in my opinion, worth it. There's stuff like that you can do to work for it, but the thing is that by yourself you can't solve the problem. Even if you did all of that, you know, even if you yourself personally had 100% of a neutral carbon footprint, that's not going to solve the problem. You know, we have to get everybody to do it, you know, and that's only going to happen through, you know, politics. The political, you have to have the political will to do it. So it's like, yes, okay, you know, work yourself to advance these things. You know, that's a criticism you see from Republicans a lot. You know, they'll say like they'll say some shit like you know, oh god, what the fuck was that guy's name? They'll say some shit like, okay, well, this environmental advocate has 2 houses and 3 cars and flies on private jets and stuff like that. You know, Al Gore. There you go. I forgot Al Gore's name. You know, they'll say like, for example, when Al Gore put out his movie, The Inconvenient Truth, right? One of the criticisms you saw from Republicans was that, you know, well, he's rich and he's got this mansion that he heats and all of this other stuff, and he flies on, you know, jets all over the country, and he uses all this stuff personally. He's not practicing what he preaches, which is like, first off, like, I don't know why liberals aren't allowed to be rich. Like, when did that become a fucking rule? Like, they say the same shit about Bernie Sanders too. Okay, you know, he wants to tax people, but he has this huge house and he's a millionaire. Yeah, so what? So what? You know, progressives aren't allowed to be rich. Is that how it goes? Like, kind of fucking shit is that? Right? That's dumb. That's like a really stupid like thing. But anyway, but yeah, you know, there are things you can do yourself personally to, you know, advance these causes, but it's really not going to work unless we get everybody to do it. So let me see here. I see someone has commented. Beehive. Hey, Mr. 1911, what's happening? Beehives have increased by 70% in the U.S. alone. Worldwide, 65% not decreased. Well, is that true? I hope so. If that's true, then that's great news. Okay, because yeah, for a little while, you know, the bees were not looking too good. And I know if the bees go extinct, then you can kiss a lot of things goodbye. You know, almonds, coffee. With no bees, there's no coffee. I don't know about you, but I love coffee. In fact, I read a thing where coffee is actually not doing too well either. Like, you know, it's becoming increasingly harder to plant and harvest coffee crops. And, you know, if things don't change, coffee could actually go extinct too. That would be the worst timeline I could think of. I drink far too much coffee nowadays. But yeah, I don't know. I'll look that up. I really do hope that's true. Anyway, I don't know how I got on this big, huge rant. I guess all it really came down to was, you know, vote. Vote in November, because the people we have in charge right now are flushing everything we have down the toilet. Let's see. That was about 45 minutes. Let's go ahead and cut this short, you know, mainly because I ran out of shit to talk about. So anyhow, thank you, everybody. Let's see. Well, yeah, I think I'm going to end it tonight, or end it right now. So thanks a lot, guys. Adios.